This is the long platform.
Yeah.
And then you can introduce
Myself? Yeah, Roy? Okay, good. I
was going to the
And maybe you just speak briefly about open science because you're like blockchain for science, right? But I will focus on Eureka.
Yeah.
So do we show the videos? Okay, do you want to shall we stream from your computer or shall we? Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So we can use our computer just to show this.
Yeah.
I'm also not showing a presentation.
Yeah, I don't rate.
Yeah.
Just tell a story.
Yeah, that's storytelling. Exactly.
Whatever. Yeah.
Are you broadcasting this?
Yeah, broadcasting again.
So
are you okay with that?
All my messages about my stepmother.
Yeah, no, Stimmer. I announced it. Is that okay with you? Did you say something? We can delete it because it will stay. It will stay on the platform, yeah? Okay. So we didn't continue. So what are you doing?
So I'm working on this iStore idea search.
Which one?
iStore, the idea that I started at the beginning.
Yeah, okay.
I can just so the idea is you have an iStore where you upload technology and whatever technology you have, it's open source, it should be open source.
iStore like Apple iStore?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
But you upload the technology, okay?
Okay.
And then you have attached to this technology a technology description file.
Okay.
For your identity and your DNA is encrypted there.
Okay.
So when you upload it, you have two
Welcome
identity
everybody
proofs.
Okay.
to the soft launch of the Eureka platform. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm extremely excited today. Like I was like shaking, and the whole team was super excited when we published our website. So it's actually published now, and you can go to eurekatoken.io and have a look at it. And I want to welcome everybody who just joined us and all the people who have traveled from South Korea, from America, from New Zealand. It's amazing how many dedicated people we have met today who really wants to create an impact in this world. So thank you so much for coming for our launch.
Okay, so I take over. My name is Sönke Bartling. I'm a radiologist and a scientist in medical imaging. And so I got into really basic research. I came up with new research ideas and science ideas, and I was like really not the usual publishing the doctors do to get their title. I was really ambitious because that was like gave me a kick. And then I like went into this like science environment, and I realized that things aren't like the way they are. They could be, you know. There are no links between references, right? So I got into open science and science 2.0, like question the science culture. And I moved to Berlin, and at one of these open science meetups, I met Lori for the first time, and I really thought like, wow, this guy really got it, because everybody was talking about open access, and the access problem was not the real problem. It's a problem that scientists have to like bring, well, you know, science matters have to bring everything in the story, and while they are forced to tell the story, like the outliers are dropped left and right and everything, okay? Good, well, 2 more years down the road, I was excited, you know. I met Lori, he was ambitious at presenting it, and it was like really, I said like science matters stuck in my head, okay. And then I went to Bitcoin meetups, and then blockchain came, and one morning I realized, shoot, all these things that people summarize in blockchain will have application in science and research as well one day. And then I, like remembering the revolutions that I saw in science, the Web 2.0 revolution, I thought like this time I helped structuring this revolution and stay involved and not just like watch it on the side, okay? And then like sometimes later I wrote to Lori, Lori, you do this micro contributions and like single observations in your journal, and these are really important things, like nobody should like fake them and be able to fake them. Should we trust this Science Matters platform, or micro contribution should we trust Wikipedia or Facebook or ResearchGate? No, the thing is to trust it to a decentralized blockchain, and I suggested this to Lori. And then, Lori, what did you do then? You wrote like back, you know, what is this kind of crap? No, just joking. No. He said like we were very ambitious, and this was like really crazy stuff at this time, right? And then something more serious evolved out of this, and certainly you can like track micro contributions, and then the crypto economy evolved, and I think you continue telling on like what's okay.
Right.
Thank you very much. Okay.
You've seen me the whole day, so I'll just do a couple of minutes. That's exactly the way it started. I want to tell you a journey that started very long ago. I grew up in India. I grew up in a slum in India, actually, and the way I can tell you that it was pretty basic conditions that we lived, and the very reason that I am here today is really because education was free in India. There were lots of things which are not free at the time, but education was free. And there was this access that was free, which enabled me to travel all the way from where I was till today at being a professor, a tenured faculty at the University of Zurich. And this has stayed in my mind for a very long time, that there should be access, there should be a free access and opportunity for education, as well as scholarly knowledge. And so this was one of the main reasons why I'm interested in science publishing, and not ICO changes a little bit, but the main reason that I'm interested in is really to bring access to access and opportunity. And when it comes to access and opportunity, there are two levels that we see. That there is this barrier to access knowledge, and this is what we fought, and I think we won that battle in terms of open access a movement, in terms of accessing scholarly publications and scholarly knowledge that is created by the public and the researchers. Now the other thing is this: there is this great barrier to who can create knowledge, and this is something that has stuck also in my mind for a very long time, that there is this artificial barriers that we put up as to who can publish, which institute the identity matters when it comes to science. But at the same time, there is also this unbelievable inclusion of storytelling in science, and you think that it somehow storytelling belongs to arts, and storytelling belongs to fiction, and when you say things like story, there is this element of fiction involved. But you would imagine in science there is no space for storytelling, but clearly this prevailing model is the storytelling in science.
Yeah.
And few years ago, when when right after my postdoc, there are two things that happened. One is that I was called by the university, the director from one of these institutes that I moved to, said, "What are you going to do after your postdoc?" I said, I have these 2 papers under review, and he asked me, so where are these papers? He said, so I said, these 2 papers are at Science. At the time it was under review. He didn't ask me, this is something which is extremely interesting, he didn't ask me at the time what these papers are about, or what is the study that I was, that it's under review. But the immediately said, if you get 2 science papers, pretty sure you will have a professorship at the University of Zurich, which is kind of what happened in the next year later. But this talk that it is not what you publish, but where you publish matters. And I think that's something it changes. Today I want to tell you that after 10 years I do see incidences where we do have professors who don't have such, we have changed the ecosystem, we have changed the criteria for recruitment, but this largely fits if you had these blockbusters and sensationalizing studies. And the second thing that I got interested is really, is there a birth of retracted papers? If you retract a paper, do people publish part of that paper elsewhere? And it does happen. So there are instances where when people retract, or when papers have been refuted, but there are certain elements in that paper that gets republished. And that's something for me, it was extremely interesting to know that scientists do feel comfortable publishing some parts of it, not all of it. And very recently we did some very preliminary analysis on looking at PubPeer. I don't know how many people know PubPeer. And in PubPeer, it was very interesting that when we look at the figures that are contended, largely contended, it almost looked like it's the second half of a paper and not the first half of a paper. We still need to really look at it very carefully. We need to thoroughly look at it. But a preliminary analysis suggests that something added later to the core data, that is much more contentious. As a result, we even asked the question as to peer review. Could these data be added during the peer review? Did peer review contribute to data that are not robust? So when researchers add, that probably has a higher robustness than the data that are added because the peer review demanded it. So there is this aspect of storytelling that got my attention, and I started to think about, is it possible that the desire on one hand from the researchers to tell stories, and there is this demand from the publishers for the researchers to tell stories. The desire and the demand to tell stories in science, this also corrupts science. And so we decided to get away from that and go away from storytelling aspect to publishing data or description of data. It's not entirely description of data, but it still has some kind of a context. So we discussed quite a bit, and at the time I was pretty naive. I'm still a bit naive, you know that I often smile, and Alex always asks me, like, why do I feel very happy about doing this? Because I think there is this at the time I thought, what should I call this journal? And I didn't think about blockchain. I thought about just this journal that would publish these observations. And so I went from having a journal name called Cell Science and Nature. This was my original title of the journal. So I thought you could publish one observation in our journal and then go and say, I published in Cell Science and Nature. And so this idea was pretty ruthlessly shot down by friends that I invited for dinner, and they said, like, this is such a good idea. You cannot make it silly by having a name that makes it. And so then we went into observations. We went into even consilience. This was extremely interesting. So we thought the journal name could be consilience, where you put all these droplets of data. We even had a journal name called. So this idea was to have it atoms to molecules, so that you kind of atomize data, and then the molecule would be the storytelling or the narrative aspect of it, all of it together. And then I came up with single observations in science, and that's what the original idea was. But a friend of mine, Mirko Bischofberger, who was at the SNF, who was also the first CEO of Science Matters, he and I did a brainstorming, and we thought the single observations in science, which the acronym was SOS, SOS, Save Our Science. We thought this was not a good idea. This gives this stress, kind of a stress signal. So we thought these are droplets, and so we were really stuck with this idea of a droplet of information. This is what we want to get, and I showed you this Gaussian distribution where we are not interested, or we are not even competing with nature and science with this top 1% or top 5%. We are really in the middle. We want this negative data. We want this replication studies. We want boring data. We want orphan data. And so this droplet, and we said, like, could it be mist? Could it be fog? And then he said, let's call it matter. So it was, for a while, it was called matter. We brought all the domain matter, and then it became. So I gave a talk at the NIH where the researcher said, why don't you call it matters? And finally it became. So I thought Science Matters is a good name, because it's also a pun that where identity matters, where the institution matters, where storytelling matters. We could really go into calling Science Matters. So that's the birth of Science Matters. It's a long journey and a long story. I'm sorry about that, but this is a launch event for this. And the original idea was that, but I am neither a programmer nor a crypto guy. So I recruited Johnny Berger, who is here. We were in 2014. It was still called a SOS, Single Observations in Science. And I would tell him, because we looked for journals that could do this, which is a single observation publishing, but would perform a triple blind review, right? So we wanted to get away from this identity issue. So we were very sure that we want to perform a triple blind review. But at the time, there is no journal that would do this. There is no platform that could so BMC journals or even there's a PKP from Canada. None of them could do this. So we thought we should just create it from the beginning. So Johnny Berger, he came back from Stanford at the time. He was 19 years old, still the youngest member in the team. And so he came back, and he and I were there completely independent. We were there at an ETH startups class in the evening. I attended it, and he attended, and they asked me, like, so we all had to participate in the discussion with our ideas, and we were pitching. I said, I'm like a taxi driver, right, in science. I have an idea for Uber, right, because I understand how the traffic and the taxi system works, but I cannot code even a single line. And so Johnny, he's a programmer. He shouted in the hall saying, like, this sounds like it's headed to failure. If a founder cannot code, that project is going to fail. So I thought, this is great. So I bribed him. I kind of coaxed him, and then invited him for the first evening. I invited him for 2 glasses of red wine, and by that evening I recruited him and said, let's do this together. So and that started as a journey for almost 2 years, where Johnny and I will meet. As you know, I'm still a professor at the university, doing this 100% day job in at the university. I just got tenured at the time. So the only way to work is really to meet Johnny every day after my work at a Starbucks in Oregon, translating what is needed in science publishing, because he comes from a different, he's a programmer. So we basically discussed, and these dialogues are what you see today, materialized as Science Matters. And so this was this off-chain aspect of it for a long time. In 2015, I went to Berlin, and and Sönke, he is this guru that I have. He's this evangelist who kind of really, he's almost like a Christian missionary trying to convert people. Every sentence is about blockchain. Like the way that every sentence that comes out of my mouth is about Science Matters. He, on the other hand, he just said, you should really think about this. You should really, since you're already micronizing, publishing these ideas and attributions, why don't you think about it? I have to be honest. I didn't know anything about blockchain then. To some extent, it's true even today. And so that was a journey, and he really thought this could change. This could make the publishing system efficient. We come from single observation publishing. This is exactly what we want to do. We want the publishing ecosystem to be more efficient. I didn't listen very much because it was also, we were pretty much in really making the Science Matters platform, because we went live with Science Matters in 2016 February. I think in end of 2016, this is when I thought I should give a serious thought to Sönke. I need to take him seriously, because everywhere there were these movements on blockchain, and you start to see. In 2017, as I said, I took 2016, and I took a sabbatical and read about blockchain, and also really seriously thought about how we can leverage this technology. Today we do this ICO, that's why we're all here, but really on the technology impressed me quite a bit. So we now have this, finally. Yeah, this is why we are here. And so we thought the way to use, a way to make the system efficient is really to create an ecosystem where this whole idea of publication could be tokenized. I think it's a new term. We had coupons, we had miles and more, we had we had miles, but here is a new thing which is called this blockchain-based, smart contract-based payment system, and this is where we started to think. We started to put our heads together. Luckily, I'm at the University of Zurich. This is also where there is this there's a department called Institute for Informatics, not too far away from the place that I lived. And it turned out that there is a professor for blockchain technology. And so I contacted Burkhard Stiller, and he introduced me to Thomas Bocek, who's here. He's the creator of the Tom P2P network, somebody who already started ages ago, even before I was born. Not really. I'm ancient. And so when I discussed with Thomas he came from completely independent side. He anyways wanted to create something like this, or even thinking about tokenizing or having smart contracts to vote for publications, paying peer reviewer. And so our thoughts aligned, and so what do I do? Because I cannot write a code, so of course I recruited him as a CTO. I'm very good at this, talking to people and recruiting people to Science Matters. And Thomas joined, and we now have a team of around 12 people in Science Matters, both from the editorial team. This is Amani, who's here. She's an editorial director. We have Tamara. And we have the tech group, which is led by Thomas Bocek, and we have two programmers, senior programmers, Lucas Peloni and Johnny Berger. Johnny, it so happened that he did his bachelor's thesis on blockchain technology, which I didn't know, though he was working for Science Matters. So Lucas Peloni, he did his master's thesis on blockchain technology with Thomas Bocek here. So we came together in the technology and the editorial side, and we are quite helped because I am exactly how you see me, pretty chaotic, pretty spontaneous, pretty creative, but at the same time we need structure in this organization. So there are people who help us, and Isabel Sigrist, she's here. She moonlighted as the COO for a long time, and now she's in business development. And she graduated from the HSK, the University of St. Gallen. And Andrew, who is there in Barcelona. We have Desiree, we have Tejanj. Do I miss somebody?
Your mother?
Sorry? My mother, yes, absolutely. My mother, I want to thank. And I also want to thank a lot of advisors who made this possible. As I said, not just for the ICO, but also for the blockchain technology, the knowledge that we had was very, very limited. At least like the knowledge that I had was very limited. And that's also the reason why I advocate for an alliance or a society, because we can share the knowledge in a more efficient way. And for the first person that we recruited as an advisor, or who was very willing to be an advisor for us, is Danny Gasteiger, who is there. He's the CEO of Percivis, and they launched the token called Valid very recently, which was a very successful ICO. And Daniel Gasteiger is also the head of this Trust Square, which is the blockchain hub for in Zurich. We have several other advisors, including Matthias Weissel. We have Sönke Bartling. We have John Tennant as in the advisory. We have Mark Honnell, We have Johannes Gies, and few more. So there are several people who really helped us in bringing this into the regulated, correct way, because this is a space where you could easily go wrong or very easily scammed. We did go almost into getting Science Matters, taken away from us through scamming people. We did. We almost went there. So this is what. But anyways, luckily we retrieved and we got back to senses. That's pretty much the journey from all the way from Tamra, Madras in India to Trust Square in Bahnhofstrasse, and I'm so proud. And it's a bit longer. It was more tiring than for me than for you when you listen to it, but that's the truth of it. But we are excited. We are really excited. The possibility to join you guys in the community, to know that we are a part of the community that can change science. We often consider ourselves as movers in the movement. We are part of this particular movement, and I think we are extremely excited. And this is, in a way, it's an experiment. And the reason that I with all the crypto and the ICO scams and etc., the reason that I give my name to it is because it is an experiment that I want to take part in. Otherwise, I will regret my entire life not taking part in this in this experiment, not doing this experiment. I don't want to watch from the side. As I'm pretty as old as the Earth, I have seen technologies that revolutionize world, and I've not been a part of it. But today, there's a possibility to be part of it, and that's the reason that we do this. So and that's pretty much it from my side, and I'm so happy that you're here. And there's going to be music. There's going to be lots of wine. There is, if you finish the wine, we'll get more wine. And the main thing for us is really, on one hand, we want to change the ecosystem. On the other hand, to be bloody happy, right? We want to change the system not because there is money. The system needs to be changed, but it's also we need to make people's lives happier and better. So I hand this over to Thomas, who's the CTO of Science Matters, and stay tuned. Be happy.
So yeah, thanks. My name is Thomas Borczek, and I'm a professor at the Hochschule für Technik in Nordrhein. I met Laurie at University of Zurich because I did my PhD there. I was Oberassistent for quite some years, I think up to 6 years, and I was there 6 years. So I met Laurie there, and this is how we got in contact. Before that, I started quite early in the blockchain world. So the first lecture I gave in 2012 about bitcoins. I showed my students how I bought bitcoins at Mt. Gox. I showed how exciting it was, but we all know what happened with Mt. Gox. But it continued. We even did a project where our cafeteria, they accepted bitcoins for 3 weeks. It was an experiment where students could pay with their smartphones, that they could pay for their coffee or for the meal with bitcoins. Back then it was working quite fine because the transaction fees were quite low. Right now they're around 50 cents, 60 cents, so I'm not sure if it's still doable. But yeah, there's a lot of movement in the blockchain space, in the blockchain area. Then 2016 we had another project where we tried to combine IoT devices with blockchain. We founded the startup Modum, where we wanted to have sensors taking temperatures. These sensors you can put in parcels, ship the parcel, and via Bluetooth read it out, send it to a smart contract. The smart contract will check the temperature, and according to some rules, trigger some actions. So we did that. We founded a startup. We were quite successful. We thought it had potential because we had lots of interest. We tried VC funding. We went from one VC to another. This didn't work well, so we decided to do an ICO. This is what we did in 2017, which was very successful. It was August, September 2017. Then the startup was funded, and yeah, now we're building the project, with the product. So we're building hardware, building devices, and so this is very exciting. Then the next station was with Valid, with ProCivis. There was an advisor, also a very exciting project. It's about identity on the blockchain, and they also did an ICO, also quite successful. And now I'm with Science Matters, also preparing for an ICO. But more than that, I'm a CTO. I want to also shape the technology. I want to see how the solution works, how the Eureka platform works, and I'm really excited because I think this has great potential. I come from the academic background. I know how scientific publishing is. It's working more or less, but it can be significantly improved. And I think with a blockchain-based Eureka platform, I think we can significantly improve it. The ideas we have is that if you publish a paper, you can publish this, you can publish the metadata in a smart contract. Smart contract will trigger then events, editors get notified, reviewers get notified, they can start working on that. Once the reviews arrive, the editor can choose whether it's an accept or pass. It will again be stored in the blockchain. Everything publicly recorded, so the reviewer has a public record, the editor has a public record. Also, we're thinking about referenced authors, so whenever your paper gets cited, this is also recorded in the blockchain. Moreover, we want to tokenize this, so everyone should get tokens as well, not only a public record, but also tokens. So that means if an author publishes a work, the author pays with Eureka tokens, then part of the Eureka tokens go to the editor, to the reviewers, to the referenced authors. So everything, everybody should get incentivized. So we have a way to now design a new way of incentive mechanisms with such a blockchain-based system. And I think this is very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to build this amazing system. Thanks.
Tell them about our website.
Oh, yeah. Can I? Yes. Okay, it's a Mac. I'm not a Mac person. I'm sorry.
I thought.
The settings.
Sorry?
It's always the same with technical person. And yeah. It's always.
I can't click it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I don't know why this is like. Yes, because of HTTP.
Okay, so we launched the website today, basically. So go there and have a look. Exactly. So there's somewhere the URL. Up here, if you can read it from all the way back. Probably not, but it's eureka-token.io. We'll soon publish the white paper and the technical white paper. The technical white paper is still a work in progress. That's done by me, but mostly by Lucas. So this is still a work in progress, and there we are shaping and playing around with options and trying what's the best solution. So this is very exciting. I'm really not a Mac person.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, first. Okay. We have a very nice video that we can quickly just show just the beginning. I won't show the whole video, or probably I won't show it at all.
That's good, actually. We can show this in a couple of minutes. It's fine, leave me.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
as you
nice.
see, we're perfectly prepared. Everything
No,
works.
it's all,
No,
the
it's
video
working,
is just
it's
slow.
working. Yeah.
It's just slow. It's perfect. YouTube issue.
Okay, it's not our issue. It's good.
This is the system.
Yeah, we have the reward system, revelation, evaluation, work plan, awards application, data analytics. So this is something we want to do in the future step, in the future work. We are focusing now more on this part. So we're building the system on a milestone basis. The milestones are also on the website. It's very exciting. Here we have the milestones, what we want to achieve, what we're going to do. Of course, the team, Laurie already introduced all the team members. Maybe you forgot Werner.
Oh, I forgot Werner. I forgot Jonathan. Yes.
We have, of course, awesome advisors.
Ozan is there, exactly. Here.
We have supporters, maybe from the
change, at least will not change within the next 15 years. It's the best solution what website is developed.
Yeah, that's about it for the website. Maybe you have the video, maybe you can quickly show it. And
one great.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. You can hook your computer there.
Yeah.
Please go to eureka-token.io to see it for yourself. Also, please subscribe to our newsletter, and we have open day Telegram groups where you can chat with us, and you can stay up to date. We will make a lot of announcements very soon and announce our token sale.
I think that's really the words. We're gonna the timeline is that our goal is to have the public token sale on the 1st of September, and we're starting closed sales as of in the next month. So please also spread it throughout your institutes, wherever you're from. We're interested to have universities onboarding on as normal customers, as maybe Laurie has already described it. And we're also interested to have early users or universities or also funding agencies come on board onto the token, even before the ICO. This is possible for us to do. Okay? I would say in that note, if we can, do you guys want? Okay, good. Then we can watch the video. The video is together with Thomas Sudov. I don't know if Laurie has mentioned it, but he's basically from the Scientific Advisory Board, our main advisor. And they also have the videos now talking about public, open science and the blockchain.
Academia is going at present through a kind of crisis when it comes to publishing scientific work. The publishing process needs to be changed fundamentally, because the process of peer review and editorial assessment has become more difficult than it used to be.
I think it's really important that we break the mold of traditional scholarly publishing, the journal article, the collection of reviews and studies of particular experimentation. That has got to change. And in an open science world, it can change, because single observations and individual insights are just as important as group studies and the traditional journal article. So open science is an opportunity to think again about how we disseminate our research outputs, and Science Matters is doing just that.
In 2018, this is even morally irresponsible to charge fees to access knowledge created by the scientific community. So we created Science Matters that could change the way we publish, that changes the way that we access knowledge.
We as a scientists always said we found thousands of single observations and we don't know what to do with that. So actually the idea of having a journal that could give you the possibility to put them out would be a great chance to kind of also build like the Lego of science. That would be a great innovation.
Science Matters allows us to publish single observations. So animal experiments that don't fit the story that later is published would usually not end up in a journal, you need a big story. Without a big story, no paper. In Science Matters, we can now publish observations without a big story. So the animals have not suffered without the information getting out to the scientific world.
I think in science we need to not only describe how we exactly arrive at a conclusion of what the data are, but we also need to have a direct view of how our colleagues see what we do and how they assess it. In other words, open science requires that peer review be transparent.
Blockchain technology has the capacity to make science more open and transparent. Science Matters will use this technology to make the reviewing process as well as the publishing process efficient and trustworthy. Reward is a blockchain-based review service that we aim to develop in order to improve numerous aspects of research.
Besides timestamping and proof of existence in the blockchain, we have another big advantage with such a system on the blockchain, which is we can redesign the incentive mechanism for academic publishing.
In an open access environment, the barrier of cost is removed because anyone, anywhere in the world with an internet connection, can access all the outputs that a university and research performing organisation is producing. That can only be good for society as we tackle the grand challenges that face us all: poverty, disease, hunger.
We have
it's the next video.
And then afterwards,
so we'll have a few words from Martin Esrod. He's from the Validity Labs, and after that we'll have David open up there.
So. Good evening, everyone. I just want to add a few words here, and I think, Laura, you will like it, so I don't want to disrupt too much this very nice launch here. I'm co-organizing this event that happened here today, and also will happen tomorrow in Zug in the offices of Validity Labs. And I just want to add a few words to what you are doing and what the ideas that we have here at Science and Blockchain basically combined. So Validity Labs is a small but actually growing team of 19 people right now, and we are quite decentralized, but here we came together in our offices a few weeks ago. And what this company is doing, so no competition, we are building ICOs and decentralized platforms, so we don't need to make one. But on top of that, we have also an interest, and that's why I joined this lab, which is this group running out of science, basically, Sebastian Böhl, to bring blockchain to science, and so we are trying to build platform or example technologies that we can then apply to blockchain to science, and we try to break them and then improve them. So it's an iterative process. Actually, might be actually quite complementary to what you guys are doing. Also, we try to educate about this potential that we have with blockchain technology in the scientific field, and we also want to collaborate with people and teams and companies on that. So the blockchain solution architecture, I don't go into it, is what basically is driving this, and is also behind the Science Matters platform. We can create data on this and broadcast them onto a decentralized storage, and we can notarize them. What's most important is we can then trigger processes, and that's allowing us to revolutionize scientific funding, attribution, IP rights, and all of this. That has a lot of potential. And
one of the things that we really think is annoying is that there's a lot of lost potential, of human potential in science at the moment. And that's, if you look at this map here, the majority of research actually happens in North America and Europe. If you add Asia to that, then we are 87% of all scientist population in this area is up here. But the southern hemisphere has virtually nothing. But there's problems that we need to address. Society wants to address problems there. So by building kind of a decentralized open access platform, as you guys are doing it, that can really help solving these issues. To go a step further, what we might see, not now but in 5 years from now in the future, is that's kind of my vision, is that we can create basically global blockchain-backed networks that allow us to work together on the problems that we are facing as a society and in different societies, and to bring together the best minds to solve actually the problem. So harnessing a kind of collective intelligence, and then also reward the best contributions. And many times in current competitions, it's not the best that wins, but the one that shouts the loudest, right? That's not necessarily the best thing. So ultimately, you could imagine that's the vision of the future, that you have a decentralized research and development market space that's emerging, and the best talents actually are contributing, and that the whole thing is governed through a blockchain. And that's the vision. That's the vision, I think, of the blockchain of science community as well, that we met here today and tomorrow. And yeah, with this, thank you.
So now we have David Harry. He came all the way from Bern. He represents the patient community and patient policy.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Laurie. I met Laurie a few weeks ago only, and very close by, at a nice place. And we were talking, and we realized we had a few interests in common. I'm David Harry. I live in Bern. I'm a HIV activist for many years, and to give you my reason why this is so interesting. When I had my diagnosis in 1986, 32 years ago, I walked out of the physician's office and I said to myself, if I want to survive this mess, I need to know more than this nice lady who just gave me my diagnosis. That was a challenge in '86 because there was no internet. But I had a friend in the US who was a journalist, and he sent me twice per week newspaper clippings and scientific papers by mail. So I was reading and reading and reading and kept up to date. 12 years later, I was very sick, got access to a treatment that worked, and met a few people who were unhappy with the way scientific conferences were operating. So we organized ourselves, we trained people, we went to scientific conferences and did citizen reporting and spread it over the internet. Again, many years later, 6-7 years ago, I realized how difficult it was to publish a scientific paper when it was a little bit unusual. I was working with a few scientists, well-known scientists, on communication and adherence. In HIV, adherence is key. We require 95% adherence lifelong, which is crazy. Communication, doctor-patient communication, has an impact on that. We managed to get money from a company to do a multinational study survey on doctors' and patients' beliefs on communication and adherence. We got good data, good information, and we couldn't publish because no journal was interested. Again, in the last 6 years, I was involved in a project, in an innovative medicines initiative project, training patients, preparing material for patients to work in, interact with companies and regulators on drug development. And while we were training people, experts, future experts, we realized that the big issue in the patient community is access to publications. Me being gay and well connected, I never had a problem. Because I always found my way. But not everybody is gay and not everybody is well connected. So these people really have an issue. And it is actually a headache. We found a way through Kazakhstan, but we are a little bit hesitant to spread this too widely. From the project, we can't do that. So I'm very happy that Science Matters starts working, and pleased to be here today. Thank you.
Yashraga will give the final words before we break out for Apple.
Good. Thank you very much. I have to correct you. I'm not the head of the Trust Square.
Oh.
We are 5 co-founders, and I would like to welcome you in the name of the co-founders to Trust Square. We opened this space about a month ago now. It's meant to be a blockchain hub. It's meant to be exactly what research is all about. It's a place where people come together to discuss with our startups. We have approximately 30 startups in the house now. We have 200 desks that we rented out to those startups. The place here is actually exactly about research and coming together with the universities. We have Thomas Institute with us, we have ETH Zurich, we have Uni Zurich, Uni Basel. All these people come together here at this place to start working on this topic of blockchain in a much more strategic research way. And I'm the only non-academic in the room, I guess. So I'm very proud to be also part of Science Matters. And Laurie approached me, he approached me and he didn't really give me a chance not to join this. But I was really impressed, and I'm 100% sure this is one of the best projects out there when it comes to an ICO, and it has got not only already a working product, which is rarely the case when you look at ICOs these days, but also obviously the advisory board, the people behind you. It's a super exciting project, and I'm super happy to be involved. And so I don't want to hold you up for drinks. Thank you for coming, thank you for being here today, and see you next time.
So let the party start. Hey, thank you. Congratulations. Soft launch. Yes.
Whoa, that was awesome.
I can't. That's right. You're right.
Good job. Yeah, I have no company. Yeah, that's good. We don't know yet. We have more or less more focus on publishing and we want to bring this together to like come together. So we have 10 projects here. 10 projects from all over the world. More, we had like 12 or 13 days. We had like 2 days conference before in Vienna. And this was the perfect opportunity to like know because like that is a nice complement. Yeah. And thank you very much for providing this space.
That's exactly what it's all about. Exactly do that. I want to thank you to come here.
Okay.
I want to keep every week now.
Yeah,